a special meeting for action. I would like to welcome you all and thank you for being here. All board members are present. The purpose of this special meeting is for action to consider acceptance of a staff member resignation. I will turn the time over to Brenda Minor for presenting the request.
Good afternoon. Mine will be short. I just, you have the information that we just have a staff member who is asked to be let out of their contract.
With us today, and she's our family services manager, and she's the expert on this matter.
Okay, well, welcome. We appreciate both of you being here.
Good afternoon. So this happens every year. I'm happy to be here, where I tell you a little bit about this process. It's an acronym, the ERSI process, which is eligibility, recruitment, selection, enrollment, and attendance at Head Start. So the children who are eligible in our area for Head Start are the kids who live within the district boundaries. As you're our grantee, that was decided many, many years ago that that's how we would run our program. Children have to be at least 3 on or before September 1st, and again, this goes along with the school district guidelines of children who enter kindergarten being 5 on or before September 1st. Children whose family incomes are at or below the 100% of federal poverty guidelines, although we can enroll up to 35% of our enrollment with families who are between 1 and 130. Children who are eligible due to homelessness, children who are in foster care, or whose families are receiving public assistance, that is those are categories in and of themselves that make them eligible for Head Start. We take at least 10% of our enrollment with children with disabilities, and we take children and families with the greatest need. Our recruitment steps are, well, we have begun. Today I've been emailing people here at the district to help me out with flyers and things to get them around. So brochures, posters, the newspaper is really good to help us get the word out. Agencies within Pocatello are really wonderful about posting our nice poster and getting pamphlets out to families. The district newsletters, radio, television, reader boards. It's another story. People don't want us to use their reader boards, but once in a while we'll get one. Our website, Facebook, and then of course we recruit from the early intervention program and the infant toddler program as well. So every year we start applications right after spring break, usually around the first week of April, and we have to have proof of age and income, all of the documentation that goes with those categorical eligibilities. So guardian papers, IEP documentation, self-declaration statements if people don't work, or they can sign statements saying that they don't work. Can you see that? You
We've
can,
got, I've got, yeah.
okay. And then we have selection criteria that we follow that helps us get the neediest families in. We do have staff training twice a year, and once a year, we have to sign a misrepresentation or falsification of program eligibility. And this just means that everybody that takes applications has been trained, and we're going to make sure that if we enroll a child, that they are enrolled under our strict guidelines. We have to have required documentation. Hard copies are still things that we have to have. And so that forms our selection process. Getting children into classes, probably us on a little scale, very much similar to how it happens here. We sometimes have requests for teachers. Families have been in the program a while, you know, they ask that their children be put in with certain teachers. Child plus scores, sometimes, you know, all these requirements and selection criterias form a point system. So sometimes children that are higher pointed, we know they have higher needs, they may go with a special teacher. Kim, our education manager, and Kathy work a lot with that to make sure those kids get in the right classrooms. Depending on the program option they want, we have a full day and a part day. And so a lot of parents who work want the full day, and a lot of parents in Pocatello really do prefer just having their kids in preschool for a few hours a day. And like I said, Kim, who is also our disabilities manager, makes recommendations for teachers who can best work with those kids. Before our kids ever come into Head Start, we have a meeting with them, we complete medical histories, we do nutrition assessments where we make sure that children are eating things that they are not allergic to. If we have to administer medications, we have all proper paperwork. We look at the parents' level of engagement and how involved they want to be with us, and try to work with that throughout the year. We get everything signed and introduce them to a part of preschool that many families don't realize they're going to get when they come into Head Start, and that is a family services component to the program. And then just like the school district, we try to keep kids coming every day. We work on attendance. We have looked for many, many years now at chronic attendance being, 2 days a month, whether they're sick or not, because we know that it doesn't really matter why they're missing school. If they're missing school, they're still missing out on the things that they need to learn. So we really focus a lot on chronic attendance, working with families and parents to think about how they can overcome certain barriers like transportation and childcare, things like that. And then just working really hard to promote good attendance by training parents and letting them know that it's these early years, preschool, kindergarten, really form how a family get their kids to school. And we know that if we have serious non-attenders in the last year of Head Start, they're probably going to go into the district with those same kinds of habits. So we really work hard with them at this age and with the family to get them really coming to school regularly. So that's ERSI. I do have another page here, and you have these documents. So this is our selection criteria. You can see the one that has the red on it and some crossouts. That's our one from last year. The way we come up with this every year is by having a Family Services Advisory Committee meeting. And at that meeting, we invite everyone from the community that we can possibly think of that might be working with our families. So SECA, Salvation Army, all of those types of agencies, but also medical, dental providers, legal people, Idaho Stars, childcare people, Eat Smart Idaho, so we get nutrition people in there to really give us information about what's going on in the community that help us really get a good selection and know what we need to ask parents to know who those neediest families are. So you can see in red, I don't know if you want me to go through these separately. You've had time to look at them. What would you like me to do?
We looked at them. We've
You-
all
You-
studied them, yeah.
You can look at them.
We've done it.
You've looked at them. So the red, that, they really represent someone from out of the community that has said, hey, take a look at this. And so the new one there shows how we've incorporated those ideas and suggestions, how we're gonna point them. Now, the one that we use doesn't have the numbers in it, doesn't have the pointing, and we just check those boxes when we do our.
So what do those numbers mean
application.
in the boxes?
So-
What is that?
So as we enter those numbers, so we have that set of numbers, then families get numbers based on their income. So if they have an income that's right at 100%, they may only get 5 points.
So those
where
are points.
They're
That's how
points.
many points they get is in
That's
those
how many
boxes.
points they
Okay.
get.
I
That's,
didn't know if it
that's
was a
right. So
ranking or,
they
okay.
get a composite score.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's it. That's what we're up to this time every year. Any other questions? You should really come and see us sometime.
I'd love to. Yeah.
You should.
Time to.
Okay.
And this is part of, our performance standards do require that both our policy council and our school board as the governing bodies, get annual training specifically in this area because for you all, you have not only financial responsibility, but legal responsibility. And this is an area, if any, where Head Start programs can sometimes get into trouble, is absolutely making sure they have verified the income is true to the best of their knowledge. So we wanted to make you aware of that, especially for our new board trustees, so.
I had a question. I know you recently had with your staff and the mask issue. How is that going? I understand you had a few people that left and everybody's,
So, if it's staff-wise, we did not have any staff leave because of the new masking,
okay.
yeah.
standard.
It's true.
But we did have staff leave who did not meet the standard to either be vaccinated.
Oh, that's right,
or
it was the
have
vaccination.
exemption.
Right.
And so we did have 6 staff that moved on because of that, which is significant. It was
Right.
at, at least close to 10%. And our families with the masking surprised me. They really were pretty okay with it.
Mhm.
And we made it so that they didn't feel like they were not welcome. We said, if you prefer, we'd be happy to greet you and your child at the school entrance and then take your child to the classroom for you if you prefer not to put a mask on. And we did that for some of the families in the beginning. And after a while, they're like, just put the mask on and come on in because they wanted to see the classroom and the teachers. And the kids are doing a lot better than
They're fine.
anyone, I think, imagined that they could be. But we did this last year.
Right.
So it's really nothing new for our program.
Okay. Then the other question, how many kids do you generally turn away that apply? I mean, is there much of a,
Well, it goes from year to year, but on a normal year, which we haven't had in a
Right.
while, so we have 183 slots, we will generally have a waiting list anywhere from 60 to 90.
that many? Hmm.
Mhm.
And then do you have people that leave throughout the year?
We
and then you
do.
can take new ones in?
We do. We usually have about 30. It seems to run like 25 to 30 kids a year will drop, and then we'll fill their slots with those that are on the waiting list.
Very good.
When we look at census data, our best calculation is that we're serving approximately 35% of the eligible, age and income eligible children
Hmm.
in this community. So there's a lot more that could benefit
benefit.
if we were able to expand.
And is that a restriction because of space or funding or federal funding?
There's a formula that they provide that lets us know how many slots we're able to do.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have the high school, Pocatello High School signage update provided by Jonathan Balls.
The board packet or not? Good afternoon, board members. Happy to be here. I'd like to introduce to my right here, Randy Dixon. I'll let him kind of introduce himself and give his expertise, I guess, before we get started.
I'm Randy Dixon. I chair Night the Night, a committee of historic downtown Pocatello. That committee was formed in 2012. Of course, our first project was the Chief Theater sign. In 16, at least 30 years, in 16, we relit the Pocatello Indian neon sign. Tremendous effort between historic downtown Pocatello and Pocatello High School to actually fund that and restore that sign to its better than original condition. It's just one of the most historic signs that we have in our inventory. By the way, we've relit 21 neon signs since the Chief Theater in 2013. So this sign, of course, when it came down, when construction began, I called Lisa and said, so was the sign okay? And she said, yeah, it's in storage with Blaze, who actually built the sign. And then obviously we had the issue with the mascot change. And that's when it came to my attention, because I've been staying in touch with Lisa, that the sign wasn't gonna go back in the same location, which is understandable. But what I'm here to tell you is that that sign needs to be seen, and it needs to be in a place where it's very visible to the public, because as long as that sign is shining brightly on Main Street, on one of your pieces of property, nobody can forget the history of the Pocatello Indians, and I think that's important. So the possibility that the sign would be put back on Pocatello High School someplace just isn't feasible, because it wouldn't be visible enough wherever you decide to put it. So I'm asking you to make the decision to place the sign, and Jonathan and I have been working on that location. And the other thing is that this sign is going to require a certificate of appropriateness, because that is a historic district, and I will acquire that for you. Then the sign permit, which Blaze is regrettably well aware of. I like them a lot. I found it a little hard to believe they walked past it with your Thunder sign, but they have been good to work with. I really think it needs to go in the location that Jonathan and I and others and Lisa have decided that it should be. Then we can't forget the history. And I'll make sure that it all comes to fruition by getting the certificate of appropriateness, make sure that the sign permits are in place, and you won't have to lift a finger that way.
To fill in a little bit more details of what Randy, inside your packet, you should have two maps or two pictures. One just got entered this morning, so I assume you have that of downtown. Again, hopefully it's facing the right direction. Anyway, again, you'll see Pocatello High School there, and then the parking lot across the street. And I didn't know how many of you knew that we own that building on the corner. We call it the ITB building, and that is where. When was that? It was several months ago that Randy and Lisa and Courtney and I and Alan Spadell kind of walked several different locations on our property, that we realized that sign on Main Street, as Randy had mentioned, gives it the kind of that perfect home close to Pocatello High School, but yet has enough separation to help emphasize that we are now the Pocatello Thunder, that the facility is now Pocatello Thunder, but yet in that in that appropriate historic district on a school district building. And so that's what that next picture is. Again, it's just a kind of a Photoshop of that Pocatello Indian sign. And Randy, remind me that size, 9x6?
9 by just under 6 tall.
And obviously it's a 2D picture, but it would sit on, with Blaze's help, we would sit it on a little wedge, so it would be at a 45-degree angle, so that as you're driving down Main Street, you would be able to see that.
So it's not flush with the
It's not flush against the building.
And it would be in good company. Obviously, we all realize that our Main Street, and I don't know if you realize this, but Pocatello has national notoriety for the neon, the historic neon that we've restored and saved. And Pocatello Indian was certainly one of those to begin with, and it just needs to be in a location where it can be seen. Also, when it was placed on the auditorium, it was up there quite a ways. It was 50 feet up and quite a ways back from the curb. So it wasn't very predominant, or as predominant as it will be here. That's going to be a good location for it.
Any questions,
So
thoughts?
how are we gonna relate this to the high school if it's over there on that piece of property?
There's a plaque that Lisa had made, which actually explains the history of the sign, and obviously, what we'd like to do is a relighting celebration like we've done, and you may notice in the paper today that we're going to relight.
Even brought the paper.
We get things done.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, you do?
Yeah, and so we're just really proud of our historic neon in this community, and I want it to be in a predominant location so it can be seen. And again, the advantage, you can't forget the history of the Pocatello Indians if that sign's on lit every night.
And the plaque, Chairman, would kind of be on those two columns if you look at our ITB building there. Again, we don't own that darker shaded building to the left as you're looking at that, but I imagine that the plaque could be here on one of these two side columns, probably the one closest to downtown Main Street. So again, as you come up to it, you can read the plaque. And
One other thing I might mention is that we are, and I'm talking about Stephanie Pelagi and I, and she is, of course, the Historic Downtown Pocatello Executive Director. We've been working for the last couple of years on a walking tour through historic downtown Pocatello. And it puts it right smack dab on the walking tour. We're receiving enough notoriety for this that it's a tourist attraction. And I think you'll see that there will be a positive result for that sign being in that location.
So maintenance and all that, that would become the school district's, correct?
correct, and it's always been the school district. I mean, we even, yes, so maintenance, upkeep, make sure it's stays lit.
Stays lit.
Stays lit would be on us.
What we have done for efficiency purposes, we did it on the other locations, we put a digital timer on it. And Relight Tonight did that actually, but you already have that digital timer. So you'll want to put a digital timer on it so it's efficient, comes on at dusk, goes off at midnight, every day of the week. It's going to be part of a really nice inventory of historic neon signs on an art wall, or on a neon art tour.
I just, is that, is the building that the district doesn't own to nearest Main Street, or is that farthest away from Main Street?
No, it's
It's right
connected.
on.
It's right on Main Street.
So it's right on Main Street. So if you look at it, I mean,
Oh, this is facing Main Street.
yes.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought it was kind of at a diagonal.
So if you look, our building does have that facing Main Street, it kind of diagonals back towards Arthur, and then it parallels Main Street again. But this would be right on basically the sidewalk. So you could walk.
Oh, okay.
So,
that
so
section.
back on this picture here, that has our ITB building, again, it will be right below that sidewalk.
Okay.
That you'll be able to see
Facing.
it that way. And then you can see the back side, or the part that's set back.
That kind of goes. down.
Yeah, that kind of diagonal again, same building, but of course, the signage would be much more visible in the front section there.
I like it. I think this is great.
Just one more thing. You don't think it would look better on the palace, on the north side of the palace? Or do you think that would be a distraction to the high school?
What's the palace?
That's the
So,
new gym.
The gym.
The new gym.
I, again, speaking for myself, and again, we did look at all these. I feel it would be too much of a distraction with the mascot name change to the Thunder. That, coming from somebody that is in the new to the community, but yet definitely does appreciate the historical, the building and the sign. I thought this, and I can't even remember who came up with it, if it was Randy or somebody that we walked over there. I thought that was a good compromise of, okay, it's very close, to the original location on the Pocatello High School. It's still district-owned property, but yet far enough away that we could still have the Pocatello Thunder on the building, but yet still pay respect, had that historical significance of that, the neon Indian head sign. That's just my opinion. Anybody else can chime in though.
Thank you, Jonathan. Randy, thanks for joining with us in this effort. And we have talked a lot about this. We talked about various locations, and I appreciate that they walked all the properties, essentially those 3 blocks that surround the area. We had some other ideas kind of floating around, but some might require some plexiglass, and then you would be talking about building columns or other structures, and then how accessible is that to vandalism? And so this would put it on the main street. And I don't know, Randy, have you had any problem with vandalism? Okay, thank you. Maybe I should not even have said it because
Even the gang boys like the neon, I'm telling you. We haven't had a single issue, and I try not to say that too many times. But it's
Sure,
very,
you
very
bet.
unfortunate.
Yeah,
It's part of it,
yeah.
you know.
And so, board members, Mr. Chairman, the kind of mixed messages that we might be sending in regard to, all the everything that we went through with the mascot change, just to put it on a district-owned building. We talked about, I know that there was one thought about setting it on the roof, and then again, it's outside, out of mind, essentially.
Exactly.
And so this puts it within a block of the Chief Theater. It's diagonal to the Stephanie Palaci's, it used to be the Copycat Print Shop, but I don't know.
Well,
No.
that kitty corner is the historic downtown pavilion.
There you go, the pavilion, and that's where,
Fred's photo.
and the chiefs meet, and they have a lot of, other events, the walk that you talked about, the art walk, the, Saturday morning, sales.
The market.
Market, thank you.
Farmer's market?
Yeah, so that really, it seems like a pretty good choice if we were to look at a place not on the building itself. But
And
it's-
the improvements that are planned would be right on Main Street too, right? The improvements the city is doing with the park and everything?
That's further down,
Is it further,
or further up.
further south?
Further south.
Yeah,
Further
yeah.
south?
That's what my.
It's on Main though, right?
No, it's on Arthur.
Oh, it's on
Arthur.
Arthur.
Yeah.
Yeah, block.
Okay.
I guess the only thing I have is, I had no idea this was a school district building. So is that gonna create, will people in the community recognize why it's there?
What we can do is actually make the community completely aware of that. And as I said, what we've done when we've relit every sign that we've, and we're at 21 right now. 21, we already had.
I love the
10.
Buster Brown one.
Yes, me too.
I
That was
recognize
a
that one.
basement find.
Really? Wow.
It brought back memories, so.
Yeah.
It surely did. As a matter of fact, that one was one of my favorites to actually make happen. But what we can do is we'll do a relighting celebration for you. We'd love to. And that, at that time, we can make the community aware of the circumstances that surround the sign and its location there. And I think it'll be well received, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Randy, for being here. Appreciate it. Yep. Okay, next, Jonathan Ball and Carl Smart will present the proposed 21-22 budget adjustments.
Yeah, and I know, it's a little bit,
With the noise, you have to get right up to it.
yeah. So board members, you'll find a couple different pages of budget adjustments in your packet. I guess since Carl's the what do you say, senior statesman here, I'll let him kind of update some of the newer board members of, okay, what are we doing here today? And next week?
That'll be actually next week.
Next week, correct.
And we had a chance to talk to some of you last week as you were doing your visits around the office here. As we create a budget, we have to have a budget basically prepared for the next year on July 1st. And so we use some educated guesses on when we create some of these on where our salary schedules might be, how many units we might have, and that sort of thing. So reality kind of starts kicking in September, October, November. This is an opportunity to make our budget more reflective of actual values. And so this time of year, we have all of our salary schedules finalized. We have people placed on the salary schedules. We actually even have our salary-based apportionment numbers, which is one of the largest portions of our general fund. And so we can make those adjustments, especially for the general fund portion of this budget, reflect actual numbers. There's still a couple things left out there that we don't know how it's all going to pan out by the time the end of the year rolls around. But the majority of the funds coming in and going out, we do know about. And the same thing with the special funds.
Correct, federal funds.
There's federal funds, there's state funds, and a couple of local ones. We have a better idea of what the revenues are going to be, because especially the federal funds in the springtime, many of those budgets haven't even been set by the feds to send to the state to let us know how much those funds are going to be. So after the beginning of the year, then we can start finalizing what those numbers are actually going to be. So those are also reflected in this budget.
Okay. So to quickly kind of review some of the documents that might spurn some questions for Carl and I. Again, this first page is what the patrons saw. This was published in the paper, required by state statute that we post the notice of budget hearing, which will be next Tuesday, will actually be the budget hearing date. This is just more information and so forth, and you'll kind of see the numbers there, and the documents afterwards kind of flesh out some of those numbers. As you know, the general fund, or sometimes called the 100 fund, is by far the largest fund. On that next page, it kind of lists some of the variances that we had there. Increased salaries, as Carl mentioned, and the corresponding benefits. We also had a little bit of decrease in literacy or our remediation revenue, so therefore the expenses had to go down a little bit. You'll see at the bottom, and we'll dive more into this, one of the biggest adjustments is that we call it a fund balance carry forward. And again, that number really doesn't get established until probably 2 or 3 months after we start the new budget. And so that's the number that gets audited and basically set in stone. And this is the time that we adjust those beginning balances. And also the reserves, get the reserves up per board policy. And then the unappropriated and the appropriated fund balance that we can basically use for ongoing expenses and even into future expenses as well. Jump in there anytime if you anything you want.
The only thing I could add is this is kind of an extraordinary year when you look at the number of dollars coming into us from the salary-based apportionment. When we were preparing our budget a year ago, we weren't anticipating some of the numbers being where they are, especially the number of units we had, and they actually were able to add some money to the base salaries, and so that was one of the things that we were I shouldn't say surprised about, but it made a significant difference in the amount of those budget adjustments.
Okay. The next sheet, real quick, is just all of the individual funds, and it has their fund number or the fund description there. What the original budget was that was set in June of 2021, and then our proposed adjustments, and the amended budget that we would ask that you would amend and adopt next week. Again, you can kind of see it's kind of the numbers. Obviously, the biggest number there is in Fund 250 with ESSER $3. And that was partly because we got that in a couple different installments, and we thought it best just to put that big number there because it is available for drawdown as we expend it and so forth. And then lastly, that gets flushed out into some individual adjustments where you can see each fund, and then some of the adjustments that were made there. Again, I want to give credit to our accountant, Cade Teeter, and then Carl and I that kind of has helped put these numbers and validate them and make sure these are real numbers here. And so again, just steps through each fund and kind of showing some of the adjustments made there. Again, as a whole, if anyone asks, okay, what's the school district budget in a total? And obviously, it's held up with some federal dollars, but again, total is $166 million that we are responsible for.
It's quite a responsibility.
It is.
And these will become official next week after we have our hearing. And so,
Correct.
Right now, they are entered into our system. They're semi-official, but
Yeah.
if we have to back any out or do any adjustments, we can do that as well. But once they become approved by our hearing next week, then they become official. And that becomes basically our starting point for next year's budget.
Very good.
Any questions? Or?
What is capital objects under expenditures? I'm just curious, what is that?
Okay. So normally those capital objects are those larger purchases above $5,000. These are your buildings, your bigger equipment, and so forth. Can you point to where you saw that?
It's on the first page, under expenditures, halfway down, or?
Oh, yes.
halfway down.
Yeah. Normally your capital objects are in 420, so 100 fund capital objects.
Let's back up one step. The state basically tells us how these are to be broken down. So all in our accounting structure, we have a segment of that called an object. All 100 objects are salary codes. All 200 objects are benefits. 3, of course, purchase services, 4 supplies. 5 are capital objects, which are, it can be anything from a school building such as Century or Pokey down to a computer. And in this case, in the general fund, they have been offered the ability to buy some technology equipment by moving some money out of some of their supply dollars into an equipment budget. Typically, we don't buy equipment out of general fund, only out of school plan. But if but if they want to transfer some money out of some of their supply budgets, they can buy some technology equipment with those funds. And so that's where that appears there.
Good question. Any other questions? Again, as you're looking at this over the next week, please don't hesitate to call if there's any other questions, or of course we can discuss them next week's board meeting.
So I guess just tying on to Deanna's question, because it is between your adopted budget to what's the adjusted budget, is that something you can share why went from 8 to 24? I mean, is that related to the new building of Pocatello or
Okay, 8 to 24.
in the capital objects? I don't know if that's what you were actually,
I just didn't know what it was referring to.
S-
Oh, yeah, and as you go across, so it's a third of the way down
Oh.
on the first, under expenditures on the first page.
or it went
Oh.
from 8 million to 24?
Sure. So I believe the majority of that would be our federal funds, because what we're spending, a lot of the ESSER, or proposed that has spent that money on is some larger equipment, some bleachers, so that we could space out. Again, it has to meet the mitigate COVID and these type of things there. But this also could be, this is also a lot of our plant facility, because again, on this first page, you have the general fund, those two set of columns on the left-hand side. The right-hand side is all other funds, which includes our capital improvement. So this includes, I didn't bring my book, but this brings Head Start, that you just heard from. They're getting 4 set of modulars. Obviously, our turf field, tracks, bleachers, a concession stand, all of that would be included in those capital objects.
Okay.
We could certainly outline where each of those accounts fell in each fund, where it was before and where it was afterwards, and if it would add a little bit of clarification, we could certainly do that.
I mean, that was the only one that also jumped out to me.
Yeah,
And,
sure.
You know,
It's-
to have that big of a swing between what you budgeted versus what now you think,
And
But you're right, if you ended up with some new funding and needed a place
Correct.
to put it, I get that.
any other questions, comments?
Mm-mm. Not for me.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll have an all-day kindergarten update provided by Lori Craney.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How's the knee?
It's going, okay. I know I've shared some of this and been sharing it right along, but I just want to kind of reiterate some of the way our kindergarten is right now. You know that there's talk out there, full-day kindergarten, and then take what would be some considerations if we did, move to that, and then kind of where we are. I was checking my phone to see if I even had any newer updates than yesterday, but I'll share all of that. Currently, we have 38 core classrooms of kindergarten, which is half-day kinder, for all of our students. 25 intervention classrooms we also have, which extends, so in 25 classrooms, we've extended it to where those are full-day classrooms for our neediest learners. The class size in those runs from 10 to 12. We do smaller groups because they're intervention groups. So first, we take our students, 205 of which were intensive on the September I-Station, which is the IRI, the test that they take, the reading test. And so those students were the first ones that would go into the full-day intervention. 245 of our students scored strategic, so they also needed and to participate in a full-day option. Oftentimes, our strategic students would participate in a full-day option maybe on Monday, while our intensive students would come Tuesday through Friday. In the fall, we had 46% of our students were proficient. So about 300 of our students have attended school with a full-day option, either Tuesday through Friday or sometimes one day a week, but some sort of a full-day option. And so of those 25 intervention classrooms, 12 of them are funded by literacy, and the rest are funded by Title I. So if a decision were made to move to full day, some of the considerations we would have would be space, and we're good there. Idaho is going to be tight, but we do have space because we've moved 25 of our classrooms to be a full day option. We should be okay with space. Staffing, we would need to have 14 half-time teachers now work full-time. 2 half-time have currently resigned, so they would be for this next year. So we would have to fill their positions as full-time
would have to fill their positions anyway. And several of those half-time teachers have expressed an interest in working full-time. We currently have a strong pool. We'll be interviewing on Thursday for our elementary openings, which we have about 13 right now. So we're getting the pool of candidates there, and it's a strong pool that we have. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that it will continue to remain strong. For the resources would be another consideration. Would it take a lot of resources to move there? And we have 3 schools that would need the core resources, reading, math, and all, because they have teachers who only teach intervention. All of our other schools, intervention teachers also teach core, so those resources are there. So that is not as, it's pretty minimal there. Another consideration will be our curriculum and what would the structure of the day look like. Our current model offers intervention in the extra half of the day, and we'd need to work on how to incorporate interventions into the full day, and we would work to design what a full day of instruction would look like. Our math and ELA programs, the resources that we're using were designed for a full day, and we had to create units that pared the learning down to the essential standards for a half day. The units would be revised. Mr. Orr visited with you about the units, and they would have to revise those units to reflect a whole day. We would be able to include recesses. We'd be able to include social studies and science. And we envision bringing kindergarten teachers in to do this work and examining models of successful full-day kindergarten programs from around our area and around the state if that decision were made. So I think we're poised to do that. I think it would be a lot of work, but it would be good work. It'd be exciting work, but I think that it's something that we could do. So the current legislation, so this is as of yesterday. Yesterday, there was an increase in literacy funding that was passed by JFAC. This money's been available to fund all-day kindergarten, such as in our district, for our neediest learners, and other literacy projects. But it's going to increase if the JFAC budget recommendation passes the full House, and then it has to pass the full Senate, and then it has to be signed by the governor in order for that increase to take place. The legislature hasn't approved any bill to advance all-day kindergarten, but today the Senate Ed Committee was to discuss Senate Bill 1373, which revamps the way the state distributes literacy dollars to schools, and it clearly defines that schools can use their money for optional all-day kindergarten. So for right now, everything is still just in process. We're watching to see what happens, and we'll be continuing to update you on, where we are and where the state is and how legislation is rolling along.
It's looking pretty positive, though, isn't it, Lori?
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster because, you'd see, it doesn't sound like it's going to go anywhere, and about the next thing you'd hear, and then with the governor's push, I think, and in the budget that he proposed to JFAC, and that, went through yesterday.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty positive.
I did too. Mm-hmm. Okay, any questions?
So I know, and I think, Brenda, we talked during the training last week that busing might be a concern, or what to do with the bus drivers who used to be dealing with the half-day kindergarten schedule. I mean,
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I assume that's still just going to be an issue until it gets decided.
Oh,
But
hey, you know what? We can do about anything. I mean, these last couple of years, boy, we've done.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Craig today back in transportation, and we have some ideas on ways that maybe we can be using our bus drivers so that they could maintain benefits, yeah, and in some ways that we could be using them. So we're kind of rolling up our sleeves, and we're just in some preliminary ideas there, but we're certainly know that could be a tremendous impact there. There's,
Right.
Anytime you make some steps forward, there's always some unintended consequences there, and so we just have to be willing to be really flexible and really creative as we look for ways to make sure that we can, especially maintain our employees, especially
Sure.
our bus drivers, where we've had a shortage anyway.
Very good.
So as we continue to monitor this, we anticipate the possibility of a full-day kindergarten program, and that will likely be our recommendation to the board. board, so
Yeah.
if you just sit on that a little bit and think about it, actually don't sit on it, be active and look into it a little bit more with your thoughts and suggestions and any concerns that you have, and then we'll be able to address those.
I think the only thing I have heard, and I don't know if everyone else has felt the same or heard the same, is, people hesitant if this is gonna be mandatory. And I think the intent is that it's still optional.
Well, and kindergarten is really,
It's been optional anyway, right?
mhm.
Will you have an optional half-day?
You know what?
Will you maintain that as an option, or will it be just the only thing that's offered is the full day?
We've batted that around, and I don't know exactly how that would look, and how many people would be, but I think, it's something that we can explore. Dr. Howell and I were talking about it, kind of dropping some ideas the other day on this, and then we're thinking, how many people would want to do that? How long would it last? Just like our online program, when we offered our online program, was it just last year? It seems like a long time ago. It was a great option, and a lot of people jumped on board. And then by the end of the time, we were struggling to fill any classrooms, and so we had teachers sitting there with 10 students. And, so it's, trying to decide those kinds of things, or do we offer some flexibility within, and we do that now. We have some people who, they do homeschool, or, they with our, like, first graders and all, and they come for a certain part of the day, and then they take their learners home, and, and we just work through it. So it's trying to decide on exactly what we'll do to really make sure that it's a good education, but,
Would you consider
be
doing a
options.
survey, like a parent survey, just to kind of get an idea? Or do you think that would be a bad idea? Just to get an idea of the numbers of people who would want the half-day? I know there's a significant number that want the full day.
mhm.
Probably,
that-
I
that
mean,
is-
for sure the majority.
Yeah, what we did with the online before we made the decision this year not to continue that, because Lori said the attrition, we just saw that continue to dwindle with, an easing of the COVID virus. So, that's potentially something we could look at.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we do have kindergarten registration coming up, so the registration, they can start registering online on the 18th of March, and then we bring them into the schools on the 31st. So, I wish they'd hurry and decide.
I was gonna say, what a missed opportunity if they
Well, everybody
don't.
was in agreement in the Senate Education Committee, right? They just had to change the language.
Right, yeah, there were 3 different bills being proposed,
Mhm.
and they all have just a little bit of a different variance to them. And so it'll be either coming up with one of those or a hybrid of the 3 or something. But I think it will come our way. The money's certainly there, so,
Mm.
yeah.
Maybe at that open house is when you solicit, okay,
Yes, Amanda.
if it's not an option by then.
That's what, we get a lot, we have the parents one-on-one, and so I thought that timing might be right
Mhm.
for that, and seeing if
Have a
we
little
have,
form there or something that they
Yeah.
can just maybe say their opinion or something.
well, a lot of times they'll say, do you want AM, back in, last year, do you want AM, PM, and parents would indicate their preference at that time. So it's a time for them to be indicating a preference there,
Right.
and we'll be able to gauge. I think it's just gauging where people are and
Right.
all. And it is new, so I would imagine that it isn't what, if you have other children, it isn't the norm for them. And so you'll be thinking, I don't think my child can go full day, and then after a while, I think a couple of years into it, and it'll be,
I think I want them to go.
geez. Well, and it's just different, and it becomes
Sure.
the norm. We just have had so few parents, and I shared that with you before, that so few parents ever decline the full day option that we offer right now for our neediest learners.
The neediest ones, right.
And
right.
that when I asked one of the principals, I just don't hear of it. And then I asked one principal, and she was like, well, I think there was somebody 2 years ago who said, so I knew it wasn't something that was very often. So that sticks in my head, that it's, probably not, seen as, but there will be some. So,
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely the majority
yeah, I think
want
so.
the full day.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yep. All right, I'll keep you posted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Craney. Okay, next we'll have Sue Pettit will present the proposed policy revision of policy 8504, student dress code.
Okay, in particular, it's about our graduation. For the last 2 years, graduation has looked different than it has in the past. 1 year we had a parade and we had lots of celebratory decorations. Last year we got a little more back to normal, but it did bring up some inequities or some glaring things that we needed to look at. And this in particular is something that I think we need to look at. Our Shoshone tribes to the north of us have asked repeatedly that their graduating students be allowed to wear their eagle feather if they've been presented with that, and then to be able to bead the outside of their mortar boards. And that is, both of those things are very, very important to their culture. And so it's my request that, and our request, that we change our graduation dress code to include that Native American students who are members of a federally recognized tribe may wear a traditional, cultural, or religious items inclusive of an eagle feather or beaded items such as a necklace or medallion in the graduation ceremony. And we don't allow, like I said, decorations on the hat, except with the exception of tribal beading around the edge of the order board for federally recognized Native American students. Many of our school districts in the Northwest, I know for a fact, have changed their dress code policy to include the cultural relevance of these symbols, and I think it's time for us to get on board. So it's being presented to you, and we'll be asking for you adopting that policy change on first reading next week. So if you have questions or...
I don't have a question. I just want to say, like, I love this. This needs to be changed. The changing of the Pocatello Indians was, I went to Pokey, so that was difficult for me because I was very proud of being a Pocatello Indian. So I think this needs to be done. I think this would be amazing. To see the pride of that nation at our graduations, I think it needs to be represented. And I'm so grateful that you're here and you're asking for this. And my opinion is I feel like, yes, yes, we need to do this.
For so long, we've tried to quash culture, and not just Native American, but in general. And we need to work on embracing it.
Right, and celebrate it.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
Mrs. Pettit, could you talk a little bit about the timeline? Because typically we have
Yes.
first reading, second reading,
Yes.
for adoption.
So-
why we're presenting it today and looking at maybe next week for further discussion
And adopting it.
yes,
So
board authorization.
with first and second, so it would be, first reading would be in March, and second reading would be in April. Graduation's in May, beading takes quite a while.
Right.
And so we're hoping to get this adopted on first reading so that there's time to do what is necessary for that.
So this isn't first reading? First
This
reading
isn't
has
first
been
reading because
closed?
there's no action today in work session, but it will be presented at the board meeting next week
Oh.
for action.
I see.
So this is for information for you guys right now and to discuss and ask questions.
So here, I'll be the devil's advocate. I think this is a great thing. I too think it's a beautiful thing. What other groups are gonna come forward?
And that, we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know.
And I worry about this, I agree with the first part of this. I worry about the mortar board. If we open it up, and then who else is gonna wanna come forward, and then pretty soon we've got our hands full with all kinds of stuff on the mortar board.
And I guess maybe I would ask, why not the other groups? If the other groups want to do the same, and maybe this was a previous board decision, I don't know, and, I guess I can't even imagine what could be on,
So-
but that's my concern, is that what is the pushback and what is gonna be asked for other groups, and then why would we say no to other groups and accept this one?
So I can tell you, I talked to 5 other large districts in Idaho and said, do you allow decorations on mortarboard? Do you allow decorations over the robes? And 3 said yes and 2 said no. So it's a choice. It's a community choice.
Because so my son graduated in the year of the parade, and we had the greatest time decorating a truck, and he was a
Kids
swimmer,
loved
and we
it,
put him in
yeah.
a swimming pool in the back, and kids just had an amazing time with that. And I understand, graduation is pomp and circumstance and that kind of a thing. I don't know. I guess I don't know what kind of can of worms we'd be opening, but it is something I wonder about, because,
I
So-
think we'd have
Pride
to
and-
just look at it as it comes up, though.
yeah.
I mean,
I think
that's,
so.
yeah, I think that's.
Last year, did you approve the military?
No, because that's not a high school, that's not an accomplishment of high school. That is an after high school thing. So,
Thinking we might have.
I thought that it
Okay.
went, I thought it passed.
never mind.
CTE the year.
The CTE, so,
3
And the
years ago.
CTE has already been approved, correct?
Yes,
Uh-huh,
yeah,
that's
but
that.
we even had some discussion with our principal groups about
Yep.
courts and so
Uh-huh.
forth, so.
But the
this has been
military
kind
was
of
approved,
ongoing.
right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I thought so.
Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah.
But
So
none
what
of
does
them
that mean,
changed their mortarboard.
CTE? What
So-
does that look like?
when we have a CTE student, or a student that completed a capstone in CTE, there's like 4 or 5 things they have to do this. They earn a CTE cord, and it's actually almost,
Oh.
it's a pretty green color cord. They're brand new this year. We had a variety for the last couple of years, and there was no consistency, so the principals and I and the CTA coordinator got together, and these are the things that they need to do to earn that cord.
Gotcha.
So there's a STEM cord, an honors cord, and then the CTE cord that they can earn.
In the military,
And military is not a cord, it's a stole that the military gives them.
right,
But
And
still
the
nothing to
highest-
the mortarboard. Sorry, Dan.
And nothing to the mortarboard currently.
right.
And there's still the honors and highest honors,
Correct.
correct? Okay,
Yep.
I thought so.
But I agree with Paul that we just have to we'd have to visit it individually. But in the letter that the tribe sent, they talked about, I think it's important that if other groups come forward, it has to be like a group thing, not just
Individual.
Not individual.
right. Not just for some random reason, I want to decorate my,
But this is
self.
heritage, yeah.
this is very,
Mhm.
it's a ceremony, it's a religious thing, it's part of their way of life, so, we just have to,
So you'll have an opportunity for more discussion next week.
Yep.
And again, you could adopt it on first reading, you could put it out for comment, that pushes us out probably a month. I know today we have some representatives from the tribes today that would like to speak to you a little more about it, and I think
Okay.
that's probably.
Unless you have any other questions about it for me?
So we can't do the comment right now? We can't just have, oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, public comments right after, yep,
Okay,
this one.
but that opportunity is at the board meeting next week.
Oh, that's well,
Oh, I see, okay,
yeah,
great.
yep.
Thanks, Sue.
I tell anybody who's coming to speak, this microphone's not working well, so
Okay, next we'll move on to public comment. Would remind everyone, keep your comments to 5 minutes.
Are we doing 3?
I think we were gonna do 5, but we did have one in there that was for Randy Dixon, and he was part of the presentation, so I think we can.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. I don't see him here, so I figured he probably already said what he wanted to say. Also, I'd like to make sure that all comments are civil and respectful. Our first was Randy Dixon, and he has left, and I think he said what he wanted to say. Next, we have Anissa Teton. Is that how you say that? Anissa? Pardon? Anissa, sorry. Anissa Teton?
Come on up.
Or do they want to do a different order?
Pardon?
do we get a look at that? Can I look at it? I would love to see it. How long did it take you to do this?
My aunt did it, it took about a week.
Wow.
It's amazing.
So, my name's Anissa Teton. I graduated from Highland last year, and I was able to wear that at my commencement ceremony. So, I'm gonna read this. So, do you as school board members and members of our community recognize what you're looking at is not for decoration? Do you understand the religious and cultural significance a beaded cap and a feather plume has to Native American people? Most likely not, because we're not taught about Native American culture in our education systems. It expresses our thanks to our Creator for blessing us with the opportunity to achieve our accomplishment of graduating. No student should ever have to choose between representing their culture and expressing their spiritual beliefs and celebrating such an incredible academic achievement that they've been working towards for a majority of their lives. As a former student and a Native American, I can say that it is both disappointing and disheartening that in 2022, this is even a conversation that is needing to be had, with all of the cultural movements that are taking place around the nation. I will never forget being able to wear my beaded cap at my 2021 high school commencement ceremony, and I will never forget the immense support my peers and I had received from our community surrounding the same issue with the school board. You only get to graduate high school one time. You get to represent your family and your culture as you cross the stage one time. It's a once-in-a-lifetime achievement. Our Native American students should be able to represent their culture proudly, and our school district should be supporting them as they do it. After all, this is a school district that takes pride in its inclusivity, where we allow our Christian students to wear crosses, and we allow seminary classes to be taught to our LDS students. Why would we treat our Native American students any differently?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay, next on, we have Lad Edmo.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Bishai Tavio. It's good to be here. Bishai Nama. I want to thank Sue for her presentation also. I'll do a follow-up to that, if you don't mind. So, Chairman Facer and members of the Board of Trustees and Superintendent Howell, it's a privilege to serve as a tribal leader for the Fort Hall Business Council for the Shoshone-Bannock tribes. My position is an elected position with the Shoshone-Bannock tribes. I've started my third term. We have 2-year terms, so I'm going on my 5th year as a tribal leader. I'm here to speak with you on an important issue for graduating high school students. On behalf of the tribal students who will graduate from Pocatello School District high schools, we are here requesting for a change in your school policies on graduation attire during the high school graduations. First, we want to thank you for the waiver that was granted last year. Numerous parents appreciate and are happy that the waiver was allowed for the students to wear eagle feathers, beaded cap gowns, and other beaded items. We as the Shoshone-Bannock people hold the eagle feathers with the highest respect, and we have strong traditions and beliefs for how we use them and when we use them, for what purposes they are used for. We also hold high school graduation ceremonies as a formal occasion. Our people honor significant events by giving graduates eagle feathers or plumes to celebrate personal accomplishments and to affirm who they are as Indian people. The American Indian Religious Freedom Act and the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act are 2 federal laws that recognize, protect, and preserve the traditional cultural practices and religious rights of American Indians. Current Pocatello School District 25 Policy 8504 prohibits American Indian students from wearing eagle feathers or beading their graduation caps or high school graduation ceremonies at the high school graduation ceremonies. That policy states graduates who do not follow the dress and conduct code may be removed from the lineup at the administrator's discretion. The current policy does not recognize our rights to practice our unique tribal traditions at high school graduation. As you all know, the entire city of Pocatello is located within the original boundaries of the Fort Hall Reservation established by President Johnson in 1867. All of Pocatello high schools are located on these ceded lands that the tribes had agreed to. And yet we are not allowed to culturally celebrate our students' accomplishments. The tribes request the Pocatello School District 25 Board Trustees change graduation attire and policies to let tribal members express their right to freedom and religion and speech. It is appropriate for the school board to finally allow tribal members to celebrate high school graduations in our respectful traditional manners without the threat of being pulled out of the graduation line. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? I just want to say that before ending up, when the tribe was established in 1867, the original reservation was 1.8 million acres, and it from the Blackfoot River all the way south to Downey was the original reservation. And in the 1900 Act, with the Oregon Trail going right through here, we had a lot of settlers come and settle. So the U.S. government decided that they do an agreement with the tribe and the tribes would cede this land from our current reservation as it stands all the way to Downey, that it would be open for settlement. And with that came the peace treaty. And not long after that, we had our original treaty. So there's not a lot of tribes after the 1868 treaty that I think they stopped having their treaties ratified by the Congress. So we were lucky enough to get that. We did make the agreement to have a peace treaty with the state of Idaho. And I think the state of Idaho was established in 1890, I believe. So we've been here for centuries, and we are a community that is willing to work and share with you all. And we do thank you for making that change in the name. No disrespect to that as alumni, but sometimes change is hard, and sometimes we have to move on. And I do like that presentation about putting up the chief head somewhere that's respectful in a respectful manner, and nothing against that. And there is a lot of historic value downtown Pocatello that is not common knowledge to modern schools.
Thank you, Led.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, well, that concludes this meeting, and I declare this work session adjourned.